Hey guys, what's up? Aditya here, and I'm back with another lesson. And this is one of the most complex relations, and I would rather say a challenge to Indian foreign policy. That is the Chinese dragon. This video is presented by me. You can follow me on Unacademy for all the more awesome videos that are about to come and that have already been uploaded. I'd also request you to rate, review, and recommend the video if this is helpful, and please provide feedback so that we can improve the quality of our content. Now, before understanding the complex dynamics of India China relations, we must understand the background of India China relations. See, for any country, if you need to understand the relations or the things that are happening in 2016, you have to go back to maybe 1950s so as to understand the crux or the edifice on which the relationships today are built. So for China also, we'll try to understand the background of relationship, the phases of relationship. As you know, India China relationship has been through various phases. Sometimes there was a good amount of relationship, you had multiple dimensions, but at the same time then you had wars between the two countries. So it is a relationship where once sometimes India and China cooperate. So you have cooperation between the two in International Monetary Fund reforms, right? But at the same time, you also have competition. So India and China compete for their markets in Africa and Latin American countries. Also, at the same time, there is also containment. So China's strong relationship with Pakistan is in order to contain the emergence of India as a regional power. And also, India tries to balance Chinese presence with the use of USA. So this kind of relationship you can easily understand if you have understanding of the background of relationship. Another important aspect is the issues with respect to India-China relationship. So these issues range from one of the most prominent issue is the border dispute. So you have a huge border with China, and it is disputed also. So obviously, border dispute together with the historical context allows you to understand how this kind of relationship plays today and what can be expected in future. Together with this, as you know, today economics forms the backbone of any good relationship. So you have trade dispute. Together with that, you have the Belt and the Road Initiative, which is projected as an economic integration of the regions, but we have to understand the geostrategic and the geopolitical angles associated with the OBOR initiative. Now, together with this, as you know, terrorism is a big threat world over, but you still have some kind of double standards with regards to the issues of Masood Azhar and the United Nations permanent the United Nations resolution for Masood Azhar as an international terrorist. At the same time, another important area that is not a contentious issue right now but may happen in future is the water sharing issue. As the continent of Asia becomes more and more water scarce, contentions and complexity of sharing of water, particularly in the northeastern rivers like the Brahmaputra, etc., is going to be a future dispute. Another important area is with regards to India's membership to Nuclear Suppliers Group. It is not about India and China relations, rather it is about Indian credentials and why there is a definite case for membership to the Nuclear Suppliers Group. Together with this, you cannot see relationship of an emerging giant and one of the foremost powers without having seeing India's relationship to United Nations, China's relation to Pakistan, India's relationship to Russia, and together with this, you have another contender, that is Japan. So we will try to understand the geopolitical situation that is existing today and how it plays out in India-China relations. So let us start with the historical background of India-China relations. So India, once it got independence, there was clear-cut understanding, particularly in the higher echelons of the government, that India needed to develop. We needed to progress. We needed to bring our people out of poverty, malnourishment, and impoverishment, which the Britishers had put them to. And for this, we needed peace and stability in our neighborhood. Once we understood that we needed stability in our neighborhood, it was clear that we cannot afford to have adversarial relations with China. Although China was a communist country at that time, belonging to the communist bloc in Cold War era, but we could not have afforded to have an adversarial relations with a large neighbor like China because we wanted stability in our neighborhood, which was required for our own development. Together with this, India was also clear that we needed the high-end technology, we needed aid, and we also needed to continue with the trade that the East Indian Company and the British India had established with the so-called Western Bloc led by USA. Because suddenly, at the time of independence, there were approximately 70% of India's trade was with the countries of the Western Bloc. So suddenly one day India could not have afforded to snap its ties with the Western blocs. So at this time, India needed to navigate between the Western and the Eastern Bloc without being sucked into the Cold War rivalry. So it is this time that a pragmatic approach was formulated by spearheaded by our Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, who brought about a policy of non-alignment. So non-alignment was a very pragmatic policy at that time because we needed to traverse and we needed both the Western Bloc as well as the Eastern Bloc. Together with this, we had another important pillar that remains relevant till today is the Panchsheel or peaceful coexistence and which had an important pillar or bedrock, that is friendly relations with neighbors. Because as you know, we could not have had an unstable neighborhood, and hence we needed friendly relations with China. So it was this background that led to a policy towards China which is called the policy of Panchsheel or the phase of Panchsheel. So it started in 1947 and went up to 1962. As you know, 1962 was the year of a war. So it was spearheaded by Nehru, and you must have heard this slogan of Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai. So it was a friendship of 1 billion people that we had envisaged. Similarly, this was based on ideas of scholars like Rabindranath Tagore ji, who has envisaged civilizational ties between India and China. Because India and China both were civilizations, we had ancient connect, we had a relationship, strong relationship of Buddhism, as Buddhism was taken from India to China, and hence the aim was to create mutually beneficial relationship building on the civilizational ties. So this was to be based on people to people interaction and cultural relationship. But then came the reality of 1962 war, and China claimed that India is taking a forward policy. Now, I have already discussed about China's claims of Indian foreign policy, although this was not a reality. We will also try to understand how and why China is so touchy about the issue of Tibet and the Tibetan cause in the future lessons. But it was the Tibetan issue together with Chinese claims or apprehensions of India trying to meddle in their sovereign areas that led to a Chinese aggression, and India was completely taken aback. We were not prepared to have a Chinese invasion. Now this led to a phase of cold peace in the relationship. So you know that there was China unilaterally went back, and then you had the line of actual control, but you had the phase of cold peace. So there was peace in the sense that there were not many changes in the land boundary, but at the same time the warmth of the relationship was missing. You had relations which were just existing between two nations, not particularly having much dimensions or contact. Also, at the same time, you had issues of border between India and China coming to fore. You see hardening of Chinese stand, particularly with respect to Arunachal Pradesh and the Tabang area, which we'll see in the next lesson when we'll discuss the border dispute in great detail. Together with this, India completely understood that we needed to have a more pragmatic foreign policy. So 1980s, from 1962 to 1980s, there was not much changes or dynamics that played into India-China relations. But 1980s is called the decade of change. So in 1980, Mr. Vajpayee, who was the external affairs minister then, he went on a visit to China, and this was the first time that official meetings on various issues of contention between the two countries started taking place. Then 1987 was the time when India granted statehood to Arunachal Pradesh, and as was obvious, there was huge reaction by the Chinese side, stating that India is trying to claim the areas that is disputed between the two countries. Then in 1988, you have Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi's visit, and this was the visit that broke the ice between the two relations, and we see an end of the Cold Peace phase. This is the first time China also recognized that there exists a border dispute, because before 1988, China only claimed that India had taken over its territory, but now it also accepted that yes, there is a contentious issue of border dispute where equality, historical markers and geographical markers needed to be seen before coming at a resolution of this dispute. This led to formation of the joint working group, which led to easing up of tensions and strengthening of a relationship between the two countries, together with having a hotline which was connected between the two, the high level communication. Together with this, you had the 1993 Agreement of Peace and Tranquility on Borders. So post-liberalization, India wanted to move towards economic development at its fullest. So we were hesitant to have any kind of skirmishes on the borders. So Narasimha Rao, who was the Prime Minister, he went and he signed this agreement, which had the following clause, that no country would alter the status quo unilaterally. The use of force would be minimal at the border, and if any country moves across the LAC, we will have a peaceful callback. So this is the agreement that formed the basis of, you can say, stability or status quo. So this was an agreement which formed a modus vivendi which can be established between the two countries. Together with this, then you have the 2003 that led to the formation of strategic partnership between India and China, and it led to starting off the confidence building measures between the two countries. At the same time, in 2003, Sikkim, which was earlier claimed as an independent country by China, was recognized as a territory and a state of India. Similarly, in 2010, with Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's visit, we had the BDCA, or the Border Defense Cooperation Agreement, which led to the re-establishment of the hotline. Also, together with this, you had flag post meetings at borders between the army commanders, and also both countries adopted the policy of maximum restraint. It is in this context that you should see Prime Minister Modi's visit, and Xi Jinping in Fort Lisa has said that India and China needs a 5-point approach. We need to have constant strategic communication. We need to have cooperation in multilateral fora, and that is but obvious because of the two rising powers. So you needed cooperation in SCO, you need cooperation to stabilize Afghanistan in United Nations Security Council reforms, in IMF reforms, etc. We needed to harness each other's strength. So India is a software superpower, China is a manufacturing superpower. We need to build our economic relationships based on mutually beneficial trades. Together with this, we need to strengthen the civilizational context that was initially envisaged on people-to-people contact. It is in this context that Prime Minister Modi gave Inch Towards Miles, that is India and China Millennium of Exclusive Synergy, and it is the vision of our Prime Minister that we need to rewrite the historical adversarial kind of a relationship or the context of 1962 war, and we have to move beyond the history of 1950s. We need to understand that border dispute is a historical legacy, but we also have a responsibility to ensure that peace in the world can only be established if these two countries, amounting to almost 35% of the population, have peace amongst themselves. Thank you guys for watching. Please recommend anything if you would like. In the next video, we'll continue. Have an awesome day. What's up guys, Aditya here. I'm back with another lesson and now we are going to discuss India-China border dispute and if time permits the water dispute between the two countries. This lesson is presented by me. You can read more about me here and can follow me on this link at Unacademy for more awesome lessons. I'd also request you to recommend this video if this is helpful and please provide feedback so that we can improve the quality of our content. Now, India-China dispute, the border dispute, can be divided into three sectors. So I'll make this as the western sector dispute. This sector, that is the Sikkim area, that is the central sector dispute. And this is the eastern sector dispute. So on the western sector, this is the magnified view of the western sector. So you have this part, that is the Aksai Chin region and the Shasgam Valley that is disputed between India and China. In the central sector, you have some border area with regards to Sikkim, and you already know, as we have discussed in the previous video, it is not about complete Sikkim, but just few areas in Sikkim, because in 2003, Sikkim has been recognized as an Indian state by China. And in the eastern sector, that is the most contentious issue, and we'll understand the reasons for such contentions, is the claims of China in the Arunachal Pradesh. So you also have to understand India's position in these regards. So here, India claims this line, that is the Johnson line, as the Indian territory, and China claims the McDonald's lines as the Chinese territory. China claims that this McDonald line is the actual territory because Johnson line was never presented to China when this agreement was reached between British India and Tibet. Similarly, in the eastern sector, India claims McMahon line as the line, but China claims that McMahon line is not the real boundary. Rather, it claims almost all of Arunachal Pradesh together with Tawang Tract area on the western borders of Arunachal Pradesh as Chinese territory. Now, the Chinese position in the western sector, as we have already discussed, it supports McDonald lines and claims Aksai Chin region, and it is claimed by China. Similarly, in the eastern sector, it does not accept the McMahon line that India proposes and India accepts, and rather claims large parts of Arunachal as southern Tibet. We'll try to understand the reasons of claiming Arunachal Pradesh. What is the strategic importance of Arunachal Pradesh for China and how it is linked to the Tibetan cause. In the middle sector, the region is almost peaceful apart from small claims of the Sikkim region. Together with this, the Indian position is very clear that in the western sector, we claim the Johnson line, that was the agreement between British India and Tibetan Autonomous Region, and hence Aksai Chin is a part of Jammu and Kashmir. Together with this, in the eastern sector, we claim the McMahon line, and Arunachal Pradesh definitely is a part of India and it's an independent state. And in middle sector, as we have discussed, mostly differences have been resolved because Sikkim is also recognized as an state of India by China in 2003. Now, let us understand why China claimed these areas. Now, what is the geopolitical aims or the strategic importance of these areas? Now, let us first try to understand the western sector. Apart from this, in the eastern sector, there are multiple reasons of why China claims Arunachal Pradesh. Now, one of the most important is rather than the spiritual angle, the correct word here should be strategic spiritual. Now, what do I mean by strategic spiritual? Now, we all know that Tibet, the Tibetan Autonomous Region, was earlier not a part of China, but rather was taken by force by Beijing. So once it has taken, it wanted to take the areas of Arunachal Pradesh also because you have a large amount of Tibetan population or population similar to that of people living in Tibet in the Arunachal Pradesh. So China always has this fear. Also, Tibet is a very important pilgrimage place for the leaders like Dalai Lama and the community that live in the Tibetan region. So China does not want to give this kind of an advantage to India. Together with this, you have the fertile area of this region. Because of the Brahmaputra and its tributaries, it is one of the most fertile regions. And as population of China grows, it needs food production. Also, as we know, India's northeast has a hydroelectric potential of 60,000 megawatts. In 60,000 megawatts, more than 5,000 megawatts can be easily extracted in the Arunachal Pradesh region. You must be knowing about the Subansiri Dam, that is one of the largest dams that is being developed on the Subansiri tributary in Arunachal Pradesh. So this is one of the important things. Now, a geostrategic region is because of the presence of chicken's neck, so that any kind of adversarial relation between India and China wants to hijack this small part that links India's mainland with the northeastern region. Together with this, there is another important aspect that is called the Malacca dilemma of China. Now, what has been the progress so far in border dispute resolution, or what has been the historical developments? So, in 1960s, there was a package proposal that was proposed by China. Now, what was proposed was that in the eastern sector, China would accept the McMahon line that is proposed by India. But in the western sector, India would have to give away Aksai Chin region to China. So this was considered as a package proposal. So you take eastern sector and give us western sector, dispute resolved. Then this was again reiterated by none other than Deng Xiaoping in 1982. But in 1985, China reinterpreted its own position and brought out some new conditions. It said yes, resolution of dispute can happen if we will accept McMahon line in eastern sector. You will have to give us Aksai Chin region in the western sector, but at the same time the Tawang area would have to be given by India to China. So this became the most contentious issue and is the contentious issue now. As you know, Tawang is area which is of very great spiritual importance to the Tibetan people, and hence China wants to take away this advantage that India has, particularly with respect to the Tawang area. Also, from 1980s, it was clear that power asymmetry between China and India was started to grow. And once China knew that it has more power, comprehensive national power, be it military, economic, or otherwise, then India, and also there was growing relationship or better relations with USA, China understood that it can harden its stance on the border dispute. Together with this, now Aksai Chin region alone was decreasing in importance for China, because now China had already created road infrastructure connecting the Xinjiang and the Tibetan region, so it needed less of Aksai Chin. So in 1985, it reiterated its position and said that anything of any solution for border dispute will have to include restitution of Tawang as an indispensable area of China. Now, External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj has said in 2015 that we need an out-of-box solutions. Now, why India needs to, if there is modus vivendi, there is not much, border skirmishes that are happening. Yes, you have at times a few instances of military overtures here and there, but why do we need to have this solution? Now, first important reason is we need to understand power asymmetry and strategic gap between India and China is increasing. Now, China today is 5 times Indian GDP. The Chinese economy is 5 times of that of Indian economy. Its military expenditure is 3 times that of India. So in no time, Chinese strategic comprehensive national power would be asymmetrical, which would be far ahead than India. Hence, Chinese stand would then be more hardened. So India needs to solve this kind of relationship. Also, any kind of adversarial relationship would not lead other areas of relationship to prosper. So you cannot have better economic, people to people, cultural, civilizational relationship if you have a large border dispute that is looming at your forehead. So what can be one of the possible out-of-box solutions? See, any solution to this border dispute is very difficult for the one reason that China does not or is not willing to come to the fullest to solve the border dispute. As you know, China wants to keep this thing looming large because today also it has Malacca dilemma. So at the time, till the time that the border dispute is relevant, China can have strategic advantage with respect to India. So China will not be much willing, although statements from Chinese heads of the states might come that we want to solve this historical dispute, but you have to understand that in reality, China is not that forthcoming or willing to solve the dispute, because a disputed territory between India and China is to Chinese advantage as opposed to India's disadvantage. So what can be some solution? So former Foreign Secretary Ambassador Shyam Saran has given a proposal. Rather, it's just a proposal, but it's a good one. So India can accept an LAC, that is the line of actual control, that is the status quo plus solution, where status quo in the eastern sector would be maintained, but China will have to give away some territory in the western sector. But and this was even proposed in 1980s. This is not just a hypothetical or a utopian solution. This was proposed, but this was not taken up by both sides then. So LAC plus solution can be status quo maintenance together with China, together with mutually free movement of pilgrims in the Tawang area. So India can allow free movement of Tibetan pilgrims in the monastery town of Tawang, together with Indian pilgrims can be provided free movement in the Kailash Mansarovar region. So this is one of the solutions that can be proposed to resolve this border dispute. But you must understand that China would not be much forthcoming or willing to solve the dispute because it is in its advantage. In the next video, we'll talk about the water dispute that may arise between the two Asian giants. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day. Guys, Aditya here, and I'm back with another lesson, and this is the part 3 of India-China relations, and we are going to talk about the water relations or dispute between the two countries. This lesson is presented by me. You can read more about me here and can follow me on Unacademy at this link for more awesome videos. I would also request you to recommend the lesson if this is helpful, and provide feedback on these videos. Now, most of you might have heard about the India-China border dispute that we have already discussed in the previous lesson, but might not have heard about the water issue. And it is understandable, because water issue at present is of small magnitude but might become a conflictual point in future. So in order to understand the water dispute, we have to understand the geographical as well as the geopolitical context, as well as the thinking within the Chinese strategic community and the Chinese government. Now, China at times is called a hydrohegemon. Now, this is a term used by scholars like Brahmachelani. Now, why it is called a hydrohegemon needs to be acknowledged. Now, this is a map of the Tibetan autonomous region of China. Now, you can easily see that this Tibetan region is a source of major rivers like Yangtze, then you have Salween, then you have Mekong, then you have rivers like Brahmaputra, etc. To the southern area, to the western area, you have Saheli River to Kazakhstan. In the north, you have this river Amur to Russia. So China already knew and always knew that if it needs water, it needs to get hold of the Tibetan autonomous region, and that is why China's insistence on one China policy, and that is why it reacts so harshly to any talks of Tibet as an autonomous region. Now, China, apart from the natural resources that exist in the Tibetan region, particularly the rare earth metals, etc., water is a strategic asset of the Tibetan region which China wants to exploit. Also, as you can see from the graph, only one major river, that is Yangtze, flows in the northern side of China, and if you map it against the population density, you have major population existing in the northern side. So China always knew that if it wants to have development in the northern side, it needs to tap into the resources from the southern waters also, and hence China's insistence on Tibet as an integral part of China. Now, we have to see some facts that are unique to China. Now, China undertook the annexation of the Tibetan region in 1951 because of the water resources that Tibet area provides. Similarly, for the Xinjiang region also, China absorbed the region because of the water resources. So you can see that water is not just a community resource, but it is an existential resource for China. And China also knows that it is a strategic asset that China can use and exploit it for its development, but at the same time can use or exploit it against the advantage of any other lower riparian countries like India, like Laos, Myanmar, etc. Also, China refuses to accede to any water sharing arrangements. You must have heard about the Indus Water Treaty, which is one of the most generous water sharing agreement in the world, and where a large responsible upper riparian country like India follows and provides 80% of the water to the lower riparian countries like Pakistan. Similarly, India also has a treaty with Bangladesh, that is the Ganges Treaty, where we share equitable amount of water with Bangladesh. But China never comes inside these agreements, because China says, and China follows this policy of full sovereignty or indisputable sovereignty. What China claims is that if this is the geographical region of China and any water flows through this region, the whole water would be a part of China, and China can use and exploit that water in as way as it wants, because that belongs to Chinese territory and it is China's water. Now, this kind of assessment of resource, that is water, particularly when it is transnational in nature, is problematic for India and other lower riparian countries. Some other facts are, now China has become the biggest dam builder in the world. A small fact to substantiate this point is that in 1949, China had just 3 dams. But today in 2015, not only China boasts of the largest dam, that is the Three Gorges Dam, but the total per annum dam building capacity of China surpasses the capacity of the whole world combined. So you have to understand that China can build dams at a pace that no other country can. China also has Tibetan region, and it is a fact that Tibet is source to more rivers than any other state in the world. China also does not agree to water sharing arrangements, as we have already discussed. Now, then some people might question that there is something called as the India-China Brahmaputra, not dispute rather, sorry. There should be water data sharing arrangement. Now, what is that if China does not come into agreements? You must understand that India-China Brahmaputra water data sharing arrangement is just a commercial contract where India pays a sum of 82 lakh per annum to China just so that they can tell us the amount of water that will be available or that is available in the Yarlung Sangpo in Chinese territory. So it is not a water sharing arrangement, rather it's just a purely commercial contract that China has signed with India, and most of the times China unilaterally decides or at times does not provide India with data. Now, why we should worry? Because India has only one river, that is Brahmaputra, with China. So why we should worry about this thing? The point is, it is not about just one river. It is about the institutions and the assessments that is undertaken by countries like China. Now, another important point to note is that next Chinese 5-year plans China is moving towards something called the priority infrastructure assets points, where it proposes to build mega dams, and these are large, huge dams of capacities more than 40,000 megawatts, which have never been envisaged even in the world. And China wants to build these dams, particularly in rivers like Mekong and Brahmaputra. You must have also heard about the dam, that is the Motau Dam, that is built at the Yarlung Sangpo at the India-China border, which is a major cause of concern for India. It is not just about the dams and the water, but also about the ecological sustainability of that region that India is concerned about. Also, there is something known as the Great Western Route or the Great South-North Water Diversion Project. What this means is that China will divert huge amounts of water from its southern rivers to its northern rivers by building huge dams. Now, we will understand why China needs to do this, what is the rationale for this, and why India should be worried because of this. Now let us understand the consequences of dam building. We also must understand that China is very well aware of these inhibitions or issues that lower riparian countries have, but still it undertakes these kinds of dam building, water divergence because of the following reasons. First is the northern rivers of China are hugely polluted. So you have the Yangtze River, whose water you cannot use for drinking, which cannot be used for agriculture, it cannot be used in industry, etc. So what China wants to do is China wants to take pure or clean water from the southern rivers and take it to the northern river so that it can sustain its agriculture. Now another important difference is the north-south Chinese agricultural difference. Now in this map, I want you to focus on the region that is the north and the northeastern region particularly. Now this is the region that is famous for rice cultivation and agricultural production in China. But at the same time, this is an irony that most of the rivers or the water available to China is in the southern block. So you have water available in south, rice needs water which is available in north. So what you need to do? You need to pump water from the southern rivers to the northern rivers. So in order to maintain its agricultural production, to feed its population, China needs to do this. The third point is we already know about the overcapacity that China has in some industries like steel, cement, etc. Now, in order to maintain moderate amount of economic growth, China needs to keep using this kinds of capacity that it has built over 2 decades. And what better way to use it than by building 40,000 plus megawatt mega dams? Another important point is that is the geopolitical context, that is projecting of strength. Now, as we know, Japan from the very beginning through ADB has been a driver of infrastructural projects in Asia. Now, what China wants to do is China wants to replace and China wants to claim its position as an engineering marvel, or a country which can possibly take any kind of engineering feat or marvels by projecting in strength, and that is why it undertakes these kinds of dams. Now let us understand about the India's concern specifically. First is you must understand about the geological condition or the areas. Now we all know that the syntaxial bend at the Brahmaputra is an earthquake prone area. So when you have a geologically active fault line and you make dams like the giant Medog Dam that is proposed, you can have huge consequences for the Indian subcontinent in general. Second point is that in 2016 a controversy broke out when larger Lahalo project blocked one of the territories of Brahmaputra. Now, Chinese officials may say that most of these dams are run-of-the-river projects and India should not be concerned, but in 2016 this did happen. So it is a cause of concern and a major cause of concern. Similarly, ecologically also, huge dams in these rivers not only alter the natural river basin flow, but also takes away the silt that comes and makes the northeastern region a fertile ground. Third important point is with respect to the cultural life that the people of that area enjoy because of Brahmaputra. Then it may also affect Bangladesh, because more than 70% of Bangladesh and its jute industry depends on water from Brahmaputra and Ganga. So if it is hugely dependent on Brahmaputra, and if China diverts water from Brahmaputra, Bangladesh is going to be affected mostly, and what this might trigger is that a water deficit in Bangladesh might trigger forced migration in the northeastern region of India, which is a cause of concern for us. So what has been India's response till now? Now, India also came up with another engineering solution and engineering marvel and said that we will also build 2 dams in Arunachal Pradesh. So one is the proposed Kaming hydroelectric project, that is the 600 megawatt project, and another is the Subansiri hydroelectric project, that is the 2000 megawatt project in Arunachal Pradesh. Now this proposed project, which may complete in somewhere in 2018, is one of the largest dams that India has ever built. Now, but we need to understand that India is not China. We have some concerns of NGOs, we have ecological concerns, we have concerns with regards to displacement of people, etc. Now, China, you cannot have concerns, because in China, you know what kind of regime they have. You cannot have concerns, NGOs cannot speak against the government, so on and so forth. So China can undertake in these kinds of marvels very easily at gunpoint, but India cannot. So these kinds of problems does occur in Indian scenario. Another important point is that in Arunachal Pradesh, we already know that there is a border dispute. Now, once China can claim Arunachal Pradesh, or if China claims Arunachal Pradesh, then under the doctrine of prior appropriation, that is a concept in international law, China can claim again that the water in this region also belongs to China. So this is a cause of concern. Another important point is that in 2006, India and China, in India's response was that in 2006, India-China did start a water sharing group, but it had no significant results. India has also tried to create institutions like water sharing arrangements, as we have already discussed, the industry tea, etc. But China has not been forthcoming in order to discuss even the issues with this regard. Now, what needs to be done, or what can India do? One of the proposals is that India can form a coalition of like-minded countries, because we know that Bangladesh and Mekong River states, etc., would be equally affected like India. So why not have an arrangement or force China by forming a coalition of like-minded countries? And this has been done in Europe. It is not just Asia that has having this kind of transnational water resources. It has been successfully done in Europe. So India can move in this direction. Another important point is that India needs to create institutions for effective dispute resolution, because China does not follow a transparent mechanism. We know about Chinese dams only when satellites show us. Most of the times they would say that they are not building dams. So we need to create a harmonious rule-based system which is transparent, and mutual data sharing can happen between these countries. Now, this was the whole water dispute between India and China. I hope you would have liked this video, and I would also want to know your feedback with this regard. We'll continue with India-China relations in the next video. Have an awesome day. Fellows, Artya here, and I'm back with another lesson. And in this lesson, we are going to talk about India-China trade relations and the OBOR initiative. This lesson is presented by me. You can read more about me here and can follow me at this link on Unacademy for more awesome videos. And I'd also request you to recommend this video if this is useful in any way, and provide feedback in the comments below. Now, moving directly to the trade aspect of India-China relations, we know that India-China relations, economics is one of the strongest pillars. So today you have a trade of $70 billion. And if you think it is small, just consider the fact that in 2000 it was merely $3 billion. So today $70 billion is a good amount of trade, and China is among the top 5 trading partners of India. We should also look at, but there are some issues with respect to trade deficits. And in order to understand that trade deficits, we should first understand the major imports and major exports to China. The major imports from China include mostly manufactured products like telecom hardware, computer hardware, peripherals, fertilizers, project goods, and machines, engineering machines, etc., and drug intermediaries like the APIs. But exports to China include only raw materials like ore, slag, ash, raw materials for iron and steel industry, leathers, plastic, etc. So now I hope you understand that India, which is an IT superpower, does not export IT products, neither it exports the pharmaceutical products to China, but rather it just has imports of high manufactured products. So what happens is that huge amounts of manufactured products import together with less exports leads to a burgeoning trade deficit. And if you know the figure, out of $70 billion, $52 billion worth of trade is just imports. So while we can say that 70 billion is a good amount of trade, it is not good for India per se, because out of this $52 billion is just imports. And this is because we do not export things in which we have a comparative edge, particularly the software industry and the pharmaceutical industry and the agricultural products. But we import things in which China is having an edge, that is the manufactured products. So it is a cause of concern for India. Now, these are just a few figures of Indian and Chinese exports, and you can see just from the nature of the products that most of the things that we import are manufactured products, while most of the things that we export are usually primary and do not have that much amount of value. So what we can see in this figure is, although the figure shows it goes back to 2011-12, but the same trend is continuing, that as and when the total trade increased, the deficit also increased. So this is the line representing the Chinese import that increased up to $57 to $58 billion, while that of India remains merely at $15 to $18 billion. So this difference or the gap has increased, and that is not to an advantage of India. So what are the reasons? There might be some reasons. That is why the skewed kind of trade deficit has been allowed to go to such an extent. Now, there are some internal as well as external factors. Internal factors arise from the fact that we know that our manufacturing industry, our manufacturers cannot compete with the manufacturing prowess of China because of some institutional problems or infrastructural problems. Institutional problems include our restrictive labor laws, our tax laws, etc. And infrastructural problem includes our poor infrastructure both in manufacturing as well as in connectivity, trade, transport, export promotion, etc. Together with this, another area through which trade deficit could have been reduced is by accepting FDI from China. But because of inhibitions and political considerations, Chinese investments in Indian markets, particularly for infrastructural development, has been lackluster at the best. To combine this with the red tapeism of our export promotion policies, and you get what is called the $58 billion trade deficit between the two countries. Together with this, these are just internal factors, but China also has some inhibitions, and China has put out some external factors to this kind of trade deficit that is to a disadvantage of India. First point is that China does not allow access to areas like the IT industry or the IT related services or e-commerce, etc., where Indian companies have an edge. Similar pattern is followed in pharmaceutical industry and bovine industry. So areas where India has an edge does not have access to Chinese markets, but Chinese products do have access to Indian markets. Similarly, the lack of connectivity with respect to the ports and the hinterland in the areas where Indian products can be exported is lacking in the Chinese territory themselves. So what happens is, together with the external factors combined with the internal factors, what we get is a $58 billion trade deficit between India and China to a disadvantage of India. Now, what should be India's response and what has been India's response? It is not as if the government has not realized the huge amount of trade deficit, and hence there are some steps that are being taken present. So we have to understand some short-term measures as well as some medium-term measures, and also measures which India can take unilaterally and measures which China and India needs to take in a cooperative framework. In short-term measures, the few things like anti-dumping duty and countervailing duties are a good step only if there are real concerns of dumping, and at times it has been found that yes, there are some real concerns of Chinese products flooding Indian markets because of subsidies provided, opaque subsidies provided by the Chinese government. So India needs to use these products, but you should not depend solely on these products. These are just elements of your policy for the time being. This should not be this cannot form a basis of sustainable policy. Together with this, we have to take some medium-term measures like ease of doing business and the Sagarmala initiative. Now, Sagarmala initiative, together with which will ensure port-led development, hinterland connectivity, etc., can help in export promotion. Together with this, the Commerce Ministry of both countries have developed a 5-year developmental program so as to diversify the trade baskets between India and China. Also, in order to garner the sovereign wealth as well as the private wealth from China and their investment in FDI, Invest in India Business Forum meetings, etc., are conducted at regular level, particularly from 2014, so that this trade deficit can be reduced. Another way to which can help in eliminating the trade deficit is to get Chinese manufacturers to start making goods in India. So you have Make in India and you have China where labor cost is increasing. So what this can do is that Chinese manufacturers can set up their industries in China, and then India can export those products to the markets where Chinese manufacturers wants to export. So these are some ways. Other areas of reform that are being undertaken is the strategic commercial dialogue, which is looking at areas of infrastructural, energy, high-end technology development between the two countries. There is also a recent initiative, and it is a successful initiative, where a Chinese railway rolling stock corporation has come into a joint venture in Haryana, and these are some successful examples through which FDI can be brought about in India in sectors where we do not have issues with regards to security, that is excluding the telecom sector, so on and so forth. Infrastructure development can take place with the help of Chinese FDI. We can also collaborate for regional economic cooperation through the Regional Economic Partnership, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, particularly in face of exclusionary treaties like the TPP. Now, the next important thing that we will discuss in this video is the OBOR, or the One Belt One Road Initiative, or as some scholars put it, the Chinese Charm Offensive. So you might feel, or it might feel a very charming initiative, but it is having some geostrategic as well as geopolitical ends behind the face of it. Now, the OBOR has two components. One is known as the Silk Road Economic Belt, that is the connectivity of land from Chinese territory. Then you have the BCIM is also a part of this, and then that goes on to Moscow and then to Rotterdam here, and then you have the Maritime Silk Route component that moves towards the Malacca Strait and and it leads to ports and their development in this region. So these initiatives now, in order to gauge the magnitude of OBOR, studies by some great scholars like Jae-Hoo Shang from Korea, South Korea particularly, he has estimated that once the OBOR is completed in next decade, OBOR, if completed successfully, might include 60 countries with 55% of the global GDP and 75% of the global energy reserves. So the initiative is a huge initiative. This 75% of the global energy reserves is a big magnitude. So it is in this regard that India needs to weigh its options. Either India should join, should not join, whatever be its options. We need to understand that it is a project of huge magnitude, and hence India needs to see. Now these are all details for your own understanding, so you can pause the video and can read and go through the details of OBOR. What I would like to discuss is the geostrategic dimension and the economic dimension. See, China is not doing this out of its goodwill for other countries, right? So it is having some geostrategic dimensions. Now, what are these dimensions? First is to counter India's strategic advantage in the Indian Ocean region. We have already discussed Malacca Dilemma. So once you link Malacca Dilemma as well as India's strategic advantage in Indian Ocean region, what you get is China's initiative of OBOR, particularly the Maritime Silk Route, where China wants to create links, which earlier was called as the string of pearls. So this MSR can also be considered to be an economic manifestation of the string of pearls strategy itself. So what China wants to do is, China wants to counter India. At the same time, it wants to establish dependency. So once Chinese companies and industries undertake infrastructural projects in different areas, what it creates is, it creates dependency of those countries on the Chinese economy. It also wants to counter the pivot to Asia of USA. Now when USA wants to increase its presence in Asia, China says, or China thinks of increasing its presence and dominance in the regions from Asia to Europe. And the last is that Chinese economy needs energy and trade security. With growing difficulties in the Middle Eastern region, what China wants to do is, it wants to tap the areas of Central Asian Republic as well as the Russian energy sector, so that it can have stable energy and trade relations in this part of the country. Together with this, you have the economic dimension. Now, we all know that Chinese industries have overcapacity. There is increasing labor cost. So what they want to do is, they want to shift manufacturing outside the Chinese territory. They want to export these products, because once China has this connectivity, it can export its manufacturing products, so that its economy can grow, then it can also easily access or get a new normal of its economy, which is a process which is undergoing in the last 2 years. Together with this, it can also ensure balanced regional development. As you know, northeastern side of Chinese territory is more developed than the Xinjiang province and the Yunnan province. So once China undertakes these kinds of projects like the OBOR, it can take a balanced regional development of its own territories and and it can also reduce the distance between the Gulf and the African markets. So, arguments why should India join OBOR before some serious concerns of India? See, the arguments are very simple. First is isolationism would not help, because whether India likes it or not, China is going to go ahead with OBOR initiative. So if we think that by isolating or by not joining OBOR, we can influence the decisions in OBOR, it is a wrong thought. We can also have convergence with Make in India and Sagarmala initiatives. India can also get access to prospective markets, particularly the Central Asian republics as well as the European markets. Spice route or Project Mosam that India intends can be converged with OBOR for more effective implementation. Also, if BCIM corridor is developed, the northeastern region of India can also develop and can also act as an agent of Act East policy. So in the next lesson, we will understand the geostrategic connotation of the OBOR, because till now we have only understood why should India join OBOR and what OBOR is all about. But in the next lesson, we'll talk about some strategic concerns as well as some security concerns of India with respect to the OBOR initiative and what are the policy options that are available with India. Together with this, in the next lesson, we'll cover India, China and Pakistan relations. Thank you for watching. Have an awesome day. What's up guys, Aditya here and I'm back with another video. In this video, we are going to comprehensively understand the thing that we started in the last video, that is the OBOR initiative. This video is presented by me. You can read more about me here and can follow me on this link on the Unacademy for more videos. I would also request you to recommend the video if you find this helpful, and please leave feedback in the comment section below if you want me to continue with this series. Now let's first understand the OBOR initiative. As we know, OBOR initiative has two components. One is this continental component called the Silk Road Economic Belt, while the other is the maritime component, that is the Maritime Silk Route. So you have the economic component that links majorly cities starting from Beijing, going through the Central Asian Republic, then to Russia and to the European countries, till the Rotterdam port, and then on the other hand you have the maritime component linking Shanghai, going through the ASEAN countries, then through Malacca Strait to the eastern coast of India, that is Calcutta, to Gwadar, that is the Gwadar port that China is making, to countries of Eastern Africa, and again to Venice, and so on and so forth into the European countries. So what you find is that it is actually having areas which China needs in future. So China, you know that 80% of the Chinese energy at present is imported. So be it oil and natural gas from Middle East or from Central Asian Republic, China needs these kinds of energy. And another point is that China is a manufacturing hub, so it needs to export. It is an export-led development that China has undertaken in the last 1 decade. So it needs to continue this export as it moves towards structural changes in its economy. So what it needs is it needs markets that are not saturated with products. It needs markets that are new and emerging. So what better can be market than the 1.2 billion population that India provides, together with the increasing purchasing power parity of the Central Asian Republic countries, together with this the European market. So in all, it is the energy and the trade security that is the drivers of the OBOR initiative. But we must not forget that there are some geostrategic dimensions also. So we can see this geostrategic dimension when we compare it with the economic angle of the USA's pivot to Asia. So we all know that USA's pivot to Asia is a policy to counterbalance Chinese rise in the Asia Pacific region. But we also know that it has an economic component, that is a type of exclusionary trading regime that is being proposed under the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or the TPP. So, what China intends to do is it intends to clearly set out, or have a proposal that is alternative to the TPP. So, on one side, you have the TPP, which includes most of the countries of the Asia Pacific, excluding China. Now, China proposes an alternative economic proposal that includes most of the countries to the west of the Pacific, and hence this is a strategic move to balance the or to counter the pivot to Asia of USA. Together with this, we must also understand that we know about the Malacca dilemma, or the over dependence that China has because of the on the sea lanes of communication of the Indian Ocean region. So it is but obvious that China would like to increase military presence, or naval presence, I mean, in the region, so as to ensure and stabilize the area, so that its trade and energy supplies can move uninterrupted across this area. That is why you see that maybe a year back you had the submarine being docked at the ports in Sri Lanka. You also have the Gwadar port, and mind that the Gwadar port is not just having economic dimension, it is a deep seaport, so it can also have docking of naval vessels. So you must understand that this OBOR initiative is not just about economics, or it's not just about benefiting every country that comes in its way. So it is we need to be concerned when China says that it will benefit all the countries. It's true that it will benefit countries on the when infrastructure, connectivity, etc. grows, trade facilitation happens, but at the same time we have to be concerned, aware about the issues that might come in future, keeping in mind the stand that China has taken, or the aggressive stand. You must all be knowing about how aggressively China is pursuing its dispute in the South China Sea. You have already seen skirmishes of China and its neighbors. You know that some tension is coming up in the ASEAN China relations. So hence we need to keep in mind the whole Chinese rise, or the increased economic as well as security worth of China, while we understand, or while we try to gauge the positives and negatives of the Belt and the Road initiatives, particularly for India. Now, the magnitude of OBOR, as we have discussed already, is huge. So, once it is completed, it will consist of 55% of the global GDP, and more importantly, 75% of the global energy reserves. So, this dwells very well into the fact that China needs energy security, and that is why the whole OBOR initiative is also geared towards ensuring that in future China has continuous supply of energy, so that its economic development can move unhindered. Together with this, as we have already discussed, the Belt and the Road initiative has both a continental dimension, which has multiple. It's not just about physical infrastructure; it's about making highways, oil and gas pipelines, railroads, etc. Through the Central Asian Eurasian continental region, and the maritime Silk routes, which includes coastal infrastructure, port development facilities, etc. Together with this, as we know that Chinese economy is moving away from a manufacturing-led economy. So we know that China in the last decade has had export-led development, or export-led growth. Now, as and when it moves away from an export-led developmental growth model to a high-value chain, new normal as Chinese call it, they need to have markets which can use the digital services, or the services sector that China intends to create or develop in the near future. And that is why you have component of digital Silk Route embedded very well in the Belt and the Road initiative. At its full extent or potential, it would be a $221 trillion comprehensive economic aggregation, which would consist of 29% of the global trade in the world. So we have already discussed the geostrategic dimension. I would just repeat very quickly. So we know that it wants to counter and it wants to secure its place, both secure its place, its transportation and cargoes, and that is understandable, because when a country like China, which is so heavily dependent on sea lines of communication, it is obvious that China would like to secure its interest in the ocean. But the way it has acted in a non-transparent, opaque manner, particularly taking aggressive stands in South China Sea, that is the more important cause of concern. So while you do not have a, uh, an open architecture, security architecture that has completely developed in the Indian Ocean region, Chinese ingressions into the Indian Ocean regions at such great speeds is a cause of concern. And it will definitely help in reducing the Malacca dilemma, which we have already discussed. It will help in creating something known as dependencies. So when a country is dependent on Chinese funds, Chinese infrastructural projects, etc., it automatically creates dependency on China. So it will also have some geopolitical ramifications in future. Together with this, China definitely wants to have energy and trade security. We have already discussed the economic dimensions, that overcapacity in Chinese economy, increasing labor costs. So it wants to shift its manufacturing bases outside the China. And then second, it needs markets. So markets can already be found in the regions which are having people with increasing purchasing powers to purchase the goods that the Chinese economy produce. Together with this, an important angle is the regional development within China. So we know that in the northeastern part of China is very well developed as compared to the western Xinjiang province or the southern Yunnan province. So you have dimensions when areas of Xinjiang are connected to Gwadar through the CPEC or the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, and similarly you have the Yunnan province connecting to India through the BCIM corridor. So China also wants to have balanced regional development so that it can have stability. We all know that Xinjiang province is having activities which might be a cause of concern for China. So all in all, this has dimensions which are both geostrategic. We also have discussed the geopolitical dimensions as well as geoeconomic and economic dimensions. Now, why should India join the OBOR initiative? One of the most important points is that sitting on the fence is not a policy option right now, because we all know that approximately 1400 projects have already been sanctioned under the OBR initiative. You have the Asian Infrastructural Investment Bank, you have NDB, you have a Maritime Silk Route Fund worth $40 billion. China has proposed to spend approximately $1.6 trillion in development of OBOR initiative. So India needs to gauge the pros and cons very carefully, because isolationism, or if India wants to, that it will isolate itself from the OBOR initiative, that should not be a very practical option at present. Because you also have to understand and keep in mind that most of our neighbors, be it Sri Lanka, be it Bangladesh, Myanmar, Nepal, and but obvious Pakistan, have already given assent to be a part of the OBR initiative. So India must also have these things in concern. Another point is that Indian economy also needs markets in future. So why not piggyback on the infrastructure development that China is intending or proposing to make? Then you can also have convergence with the Make in India initiative. So once things would be made, it needs markets, so you can get better access to markets like the Central Asian region, etc., and can also link it to the Sagarmala initiative, because once we have port facilities, we can easily use the maritime silk component in order to further our national interest. Together with this, if we become the part of the OBR initiative, at times if something is proposed which is against our national interest, we can stop this proposal or make amendments to this proposal. So once you can influence the rules, once you are a part of the initiative, you cannot influence the decision that the countries who are part of the OBOR initiative take if you are sitting on a fence. Right? And another important point is the BCIM initiative will also help in development of our northeast region. Why not have convergence with the BCIM initiative, the Kaladan multimodal project, the connectivity, the Thailand trilateral connectivity that India is also proposing. So we can have convergence of interest in these areas. But there are some, and what could be the probable impact on this? We all know about the economic impact because it might lead to trade divergence. And another important point is with respect to swamping of goods, the Chinese goods. But we all know that this argument is not particularly valid because today also we have a $58 billion trade deficit. So Chinese goods are still swamping the Indian markets. So we need to tackle the situation independently of the OBOR initiative. The most important point is the strategic dimension, that is with respect to the security considerations. Another important is the geopolitical consideration. Right, so we know that the CPEC initiative moves from the Gilgit-Baltistan region, which is Pakistan occupied Kashmir. So once China becomes, or once OBOR becomes a part of the CPEC, China also becomes a stakeholder in the whole process. And then you know that the China-Pakistan relations are very warm and deep. So you have another stakeholder which is pro-Chinese. So Indian stand definitely weakens when it comes to the CPEC or the POK or the Pakistan occupied Kashmir. You can also have then movement of forces, because if China is making infrastructure, roads, rail routes, etc., it can easily mobilize forces into these regions, and in future it might lead to a security threat to India. So what should India do? Now, our foreign secretary has clearly articulated in India's position that what we need is a consultative process, because the whole OBOR initiative was very opaque. It was just given to us. Nothing was told. No details were laid out. What is the real intention behind the whole OBOR initiative was not known. Till today also, most of the policymakers still do not fully comprehend the true extent of the OBOR initiative. So what we need to do is that we need to have openness and we need to have talks about these areas. We need to consider and accommodate concerns like the CPEC. Some other alternatives are that at global level, we can move in promoting a rule-based order, and we can also have connectivity with the Act East policy that India proposes. Japan can also be a partner in this regard. In the next video, we'll continue with the India-China relations and Pakistan as a factor. What's up guys, Aditya here, and I'm back with another lesson, and this is a lesson on India-China relations, particularly seeing it from the Pakistan-China axis and Pakistan-China axis that is being developing. This lesson is presented by me, and if time permits, we'll also discuss the NSG issue. Now you can read more about me here, follow me on this link, and please recommend the video if you think it is helpful. That would be a small gesture on your part. Now, this is a picture of Kautilya's Arthashastra. You must have heard the saying that your neighbor is your enemy, but enemy's enemy is a friend. So now, this quote very well goes into the China-Pakistan axis. So we must try to understand how is that these two countries have become such a close allies, and trust me, there are no two countries in the world which are so close allies. So China now supports Pakistan and its terrorist activities and the terrorist just so that it can balance India or it can contain India. So we have to first understand what China-Pakistan axis is, what is Pakistan's importance for China, why does China need Pakistan? China is a big, huge economy, it's the second largest country in the world, huge military forces, that why would it need such a small country like Pakistan? And this is the code that Pakistani uses to explain their relationship or to define their relationship with China. You must have heard about that. It is higher than mountains, sweeter than honey, so on and so forth. But it is true fact that these two countries actually are an all-weather ally, and this is very rare to be found in international relations. But you do find strong convergences of interest between China and Pakistan. And it is a threat to Indian security because of the Pakistani acts, and also a challenge to our diplomacy, because you cannot afford to have bad relations with China, but you know that China supports and hugely supports your one of the most adverse nations to you. So it is a diplomatic challenge for India also. Now, and we also know historically also the whole nuclearization of China, the missile technology, the nuclear reactor technology, etc. of Pakistan, was actually exported by China. So China have been using this leverage and has been undermining the international regimes, be it the NSG, what it claims to be as a member. China may claim that it wants to protect and prevent the non-proliferation regime, order, etc., so on and so forth. But we do know for a fact that the whole nuclearization of Pakistan was based on Chinese transfer. So China may boast that it is China may boast as a member of NSG, so on and so forth. But in reality, China is no good or no better than Pakistan in this regard. Together with this, China wants to use strong ties with Pakistan to box India. That is why you must have heard, because China also knows that India has the potential, the capabilities, be it politically, be it economically, be it militarily, because of its expanse, because of its resource, because of its potential, because of its knowledge, IT infrastructure, so on and so forth, that India can become and can be a strong regional as well as global power. And China would not like to see India develop into a one, or develop into one which can be a rival to China's hegemony that it wants to create. You must have heard about something known as the Middle Kingdom, right? So China is having something. Just go and Google something. This is a very interesting concept. China understood, or China's strategic culture is about a Middle Kingdom complex. So they see the whole Eurasian part as, an area where they want to establish hegemony, so on and so forth. And this is not just a theoretical concept. This flows, or this moves in their diplomatic maneuvers also. And we have seen recently also in the NSG membership issue, you must have heard that just soon after India applied for the membership of NSG, there was similar application on Pakistan. Whatever be the case, it is a completely bogus application of Pakistan. But you have to understand that Chinese blocking of India's membership on some technical ground, saying that you need a criteria based approach, and then Pakistan's calibrated move of submitting a membership, it is completely understood that China and Pakistan had sought this strategy to stop India from getting membership. And then you also see recently China has again put a technical hold on the Masood Azhar issue hold, and this shows that China has a double speak on its part, right? So it may claim that it is facing the problem of terrorism, that is the Uyghur terrorist or the East Turkestan Islamic movement in China. Pakistan is also facing these kinds of terrorist attacks, so on and so forth. But China does not want Masood Azhar to be recognized as an international terrorist. So it definitely speaks that China can, can disrupt international norms, can move against international opinion. So out of the 15 votes, you had 14 votes in favor of putting this chap Masood Azhar as an international terrorist. But China, in order to prevent the interest of, maybe it is having Chinese interest, but primarily Pakistani interest, went and again vetoed it. Now we should understand why China needs Pakistan. China is a huge country, both economically, militarily, etc. But why does it need a country like Pakistan? First is there is a historical linkage. You must be knowing that good or relations between USA and China were intermediated, or intermediator was Pakistan. So Pakistan has historically been to China's benefit and has been of China's asset. Also, China understands that if it wants to balance India, asymmetrical balancing in the form of cross-border terrorism, so on and so forth, that Pakistan employs, puts Indian security and diplomacy into threat. It does not allow a peaceful rise of India, and that is why China wants this to happen. China does not want India to become a regional power. It may say so, that become a regional stable power, so on and so forth, but it does not want India to ever challenge China's perceived hegemony in the region and possibly so in the world. The third reason is the Afghanistan issue as well as the terrorism issue. We know that a stable Afghanistan needs Pakistan, because the whole problem of Afghanistan is actually Pakistan, created by Pakistan. Maybe USA had a part, but now Pakistan has become the sole country whose you have to bring Pakistan onto the table if you want to solve Afghanistan issue, because the whole Taliban problem cannot be solved. And mind you, China is not interested in solving Afghanistan issue, right? It may say that it is coming into a dialogue. It might not be very forthcoming in solving the Afghanistan issue, but there is something known as the Uyghur terrorists that are also trained in the Afghanistan territory. Now, China is worried more about the Uyghur terrorist, which can disrupt the security of China rather than a stable Afghanistan. That is why you see China supporting good and the bad Taliban theory. You have China supporting Pakistan's claim that Pakistan is a very important stakeholder in Afghanistan's process, and that Pakistan is also a country which is which has the problem or menace of terrorism, so on and so forth. Then you should also know that China, because of its energy security, because of its energy ties from the Middle East, requires a country like Pakistan, which is an Islamic country, to have good relations with other Islamic powers in the Middle East. So if China is having a good relations with Pakistan, it definitely adds to its relation in the Middle East countries. Though in the recent times there are some instances where Pakistan's relation itself with Middle East has been weak, but still China does believe that Pakistan can be again an interlocutor of developing good relations with Middle East. Then you also have countering of USA's presence. You must be knowing that after 1989, when USA wanted to contain USSR, it came into Afghanistan and so on and so forth region. Now USA wants to move out of this region because it has not been able to develop a peaceful Afghanistan, and you still has the problem of Taliban. But what China needs Pakistan for is that if USA has a stronghold in South Asia, it can do so by having good relations with Pakistan and with another country, that is India. So if USA and India have good relations, Pakistan wants to counter this thing by having a good relation with another South Asian major power, that is Pakistan. So it can very well counter USA's presence in South Asian in particular by having good relations with Pakistan. And last is, as we all know, we have already discussed the Malacca dilemma, and if China wants to have access other than Malacca, it is the Gwadar port, etc., through the CPEC or the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, that will give entry to China into the Indian Ocean region. So it is because of these regions that China desperately needs Pakistan. Although it is only for a transactional purposes, we must understand that China has in the past and might be in the future is not willing to sign any defense alliance, etc., with Pakistan. But till the time Pakistan is relevant for these reasons, China will be having positive overtures towards Pakistan. Now let us try and move towards what would China like to have in India-Pakistan relations? See, some scholars say that China would like to have something known as managed mistrust. So it would not like Pakistan and India to have very cordial relationships, because once India and Pakistan, the trust deficit decreases, and India and Pakistan have a rapprochement kind of a thing, which is, unthinkable of in the present kind of circumstances. But even if this happens, then China would lose that lever against India. So it would like to have managed mistrust with India. Together with that, China wants to seek Asia Pacific, and we've already discussed that it needs Pakistan because it is one of the most important player. Also, then when China's ambition of moving into the territory, you have the one road initiative, and China wants to have strategic presence both economically through the economic benefits that it can provide in these countries, but it also wants its naval presence, right? So naval presence can very well be established by Karachi and Gwadar ports. So you have Pakistan, which can easily provide access to Chinese naval ships, etc., and that is why, in order to increase and decrease the strategic importance of Indian Ocean region for India, China wants to create critical naval ports or facilities at the ports of Pakistan. Then you have, we have already discussed, in case of Uyghur terrorists, China wants intelligence on jihadis, etc., so that it can very well have connect with these regions. Thus, it is both economically, politically, strategically, security-wise, so on and so forth, that China needs Pakistan, and hence, in the near future, we might see some kind of precipitation of this kind of strong relationship, that is the all-weather ally kind of relationship that has developed over the years between China and Pakistan. I hope this lesson was helpful, and you must have understood the nuances of China-Pakistan relation. In the next video, we will take up the NSG issue, particularly keeping in mind the geopolitics of NSG issue, as well as what are the benefits that might accrue to India when it joins the NSG. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day. What's up guys, Aditya here and I'm back with another lesson, and in this lesson we're going to talk about India-China relations and the recent controversy of the nuclear suppliers groups and blocking by China. This lesson is presented by me. You can read more about me here and can follow me on this link. You can rate, review and recommend. Please leave your feedback in the comment section below. Right, so we must talk about NSG. We must just know the basics of NSG or what it is. See, simply put, NSG is a 48-member organization or a group, not an international treaty. It was earlier called a London's Group, which has two aims. First, nuclear proliferation should stop. Second, nuclear technology to be used for peaceful purposes. That is it. That is the whole purpose of NSG. But the history of NSG is very much related to India. The whole concept of NSG and this grouping was created to exclude India from nuclear commerce, from nuclear technology and nuclear energy domain, because it was clearly established in 1974. They said that if countries like India, if they are doing their test, which was our legitimate right and is our legitimate right today, okay, nobody can dictate and nobody should dictate our terms of how we will test, when we will test, whether we will nuclearize or not, so on and so forth. So it was actually an exclusionary regime which was created on this myth that if you can stop responsible powers like India from doing nuclear tests, then you can stop nuclear proliferation, so on and so forth. And from time to time, this group, NSG group, has been giving out some guidelines, and in 2001 Aspen guidelines, they said that NPT membership or the non-proliferation treaty membership is a guiding principle, not a mandatory principle, right? So this Chinese argument is actually flawed one, but you must remember that NPT condition is just a guiding condition. You must all remember that even France was inducted into the NSG group while it was not a member of NPT. So this is about NPT. Now this slide is basically about why India should get membership of NSG, and it is not a counter to Chinese argument. India has its own merit, and you must remember that whenever you write or whenever you ask or argue, it is based on our merit that we are seeking NSG membership. It is not to rebuke or to take away positions from against China, etc., so on and so forth. It is India's independent merit. It is merit of being a nuclear power, but a responsible one. That India seeks membership of NSG. First is our nuclear doctrine that clearly brings out our policy that India, even though being a nuclear country, nuclear weapon state, will have no first use. We have a no first use policy. We will not be the first country to use nuclear weapons. Second point is that we have already said that we will not use nuclear weapons against non-nuclear countries. So this clearly shows that we do not have any interest in aggressive nuclear weaponization against other countries like Pakistan. Then we have already placed a voluntary moratorium on further testings of nuclear weapons, and this is a voluntary moratorium which we have ourselves placed on us. Nobody has forced us to do this. So this clearly shows that India wants a peaceful neighborhood. In India still abides by its aim of disarmament, but it says that because of our security threat, we will be a responsible nuclear power. Second point is, in 2008, the same NSG was able to give us, after the civil nuclear deal, able to give us the 2008 partial waiver. Right, and this waiver was given to us not because USA forced it, because the countries knew that India has merit, India had credentials, India had successfully proven that it is a responsible nuclear power, and it is because of our impeccable non-proliferation record, our constant efforts of promoting nuclear disarmament. You must remember that even in 2010, as late in 2010, even when we had this waiver, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh in United Nations gave a time-bound framework of how nuclear regimes can become more responsible. He said that every country should have a no first use policy. So this, even today, India's stand is clear that global disarmament is in the best possible interest of India. But in the meantime, India needs nuclear power. India needs nuclear weapon in order to create efficient, or in order to have sufficient amount of deterrence against two nuclear capable neighbors, namely China and Pakistan. We have also separated our civilian and military nuclear programs and reactors. We already have signed an additional protocol with International Atomic Energy Agency. We already are a part of Hague Protocol, so on and so forth. So we are very clear that we want transparency. We are willing to come under the international bodies like IAEA because we have nothing to hide. Another important point is that our track record, particularly with respect to observing the provisions of NPT and NSG, is impeccable. Even though still NPT is considered to be discriminatory, when we consider NPT as exclusionary and discriminatory, we still follow the provisions of NPT. So this is not because anybody has forced us, but because we on our own have taken on ourselves so that non-proliferation does not happen. Nuclear proliferation does not happen, I mean. We have also changed our export laws, and we have even the Civil Liability Nuclear Act, so that all the things that are asked under the NSG guidelines are equally covered. So these are the merits that India claims to have, and that is why we must get membership to NSG. It is not because of any other thing or any other country. Now, what are the benefits that we will get? Apart from the benefits, that you must be remembering that in 2008 we were given a waiver, but in 2011 that waiver was turned into a partial waiver, and some modifications were made that were against India's interest. And this can happen again and again. So when some people say that you have already got a waiver in 2008 and you haven't utilized this waiver because you still now don't have nuclear power, your nuclear capacity is small, you do not have companies like Westinghouse, Areva, etc. setting up nuclear reactors because you have internal problems. So while you have not used the 2008 waiver, why should you ask for the membership? First, utilize this waiver. But they forget that as happened in 2011, the waiver was changed, and it can happen again. So if India is not on the rule making, or if India is not on the table, the rules of the NSG can be changed any day. And that is why no big company, be it Westinghouse, be it Areva, wants to come to India, because they are not sure what will happen in future. Tomorrow, if NSG says that we are taking away the waiver that we have provided to India, these companies would be as a loss. So India is not able to develop its nuclear capacity, commercial nuclear capacity or energy, because India is not on the table, and the companies also know that the waiver can be modified or changed against the interest of India. Then you have the most important point, that is access to technology, right? So high-end technology which can not only be used for medicine and nuclear power plants, but India can build upon those technology together with our indigenous capacity in space, so on and so forth. So access to this technology, which has been hitherto hindered, can be eased. Then you also know that we have given our INDCs, in which we have said 40% would be from non-fossil fuels, and so on and so forth. So for that, we need renewable clean energy, and that can come from nuclear energy. So that is why, in order to stick to our INDC's commitments that we have put on ourselves, we need this thing, and hence the energy entry is required. This will also provide greater certainty and legal foundation, because India, which was considered to be a nuclear pariah in 1974, will now get entry into all the major regimes of nuclear commerce in the world. And we can also commercialize the production. So India, when it has good technology, particularly with respect to light and heavy water reactors, can now export equipments, not just whole reactors, but equipments also. So we can also become part of high-tech manufacturing, which can in turn support our capital goods production, made in India, so on and so forth. So it is because of these benefits that we must get entry into the NSG. Now the Chinese argument basically is simple. They say for any non-NPT signed country, they need some definite criteria. They say that if India gains entry and Pakistan is not entered, you actually have nuclear disbalance. Nuclear arms balance is disturbed in South Asia. This is nothing but just hyphenating India and Pakistan. So what China is doing is, China is actually hyphenating the nuclear weapons programs of India and China. So this is like equating apples and oranges, because we definitely know that the whole the Pakistani program, which in turn is based on China's proliferation, or China's giving away these equipment, so on and so forth, is actually very irresponsible. The Chinese you must have heard about something called as the AQ Khan network, so on and so forth. So we all know about the track record of Pakistan, and it's just a Chinese strategy of linking India and Pakistan so that it can say that we are a small minor player in South Asia and we should be compared to Pakistan and not get seat in places where China is already a member. Right? And we must understand that when China claims that Pakistan is having similar credentials, it's just not true. right? And that is why India says that we are not against Pakistan getting entry into NSG and so on and so forth. You must give our entry on our merit, our performance, right? So you must remember that while whenever you argue or whenever you provide a justification for India's entry, you should not take these negative stands that if India can, what will be the benefit? There is no such benefit as India. If India gets entry, it can stop Pakistan from coming there. That's not a correct way of putting the things, right? India does not want to stop Pakistan's entry into energy or something like that. What India says is that the membership should be merit based, and if Pakistan is having merit, it should be within a part of the energy regime, and if it is not having merit, then it should not be a part of energy regime. But this, in the name of definite criteria, what China is actually doing is China is giving time to Pakistan so that it can undertake these kinds of things, or can stop India or can bargain India for its membership. Now, these are arguments against the Chinese stance. You must not use these arguments, but this is just a rebuttal to, you should understand that Chinese arguments are actually flawed. Now, Pakistan's merit does not have any merit. You know the whole track record of proliferation that Pakistan undertakes. China's own record is dubious, but India will not show these kinds of things. And that is why China has not even got a membership to MTCR, which is it's trying for the 12 to 13 years. And India has already maintained that India should be given membership on our performance, on our merit, on not anything else. Now let us try to understand first the geopolitics of this NSG entry horse. Another important point is that people say that India is having a shift in its policy. What kind of shift? In Cold War, we said that these regimes, be it MTCR, Wassenaar arrangement or the NSG, we were critical of these regimes because it was true that these were exclusionary regimes which said India should not do nuclear proliferation or nuclear testing. Why should India, a sovereign country, should not do this, right? So India was justifiably critical of these regimes, and we should have been critical of these regimes. But post 2008, India has made it clear that it wants to be a part of these regimes, because now when India has become and has proved its credential of stable and responsible nuclear power, it wants to be in these regimes because it is hampering India's interest. So some people say that it reflects a policy shift. Yes, it is a policy shift, but it is a shift which is guided by our national interest, and it is a positive development, right? We also understand that India has not changed its original goal of disarmament, right? So even in 2010, when Prime Minister Manmohan Singh went to UN, he said that India will undertake disarmament, or India will undertake, the ultimate goal still remains global, nuclear, verifiable, time-tested, time-bound disarmament. This is the exact phrase. But you must understand that India still maintains that global disarmament of every country is actually in the best interest of India, right? So it does not reflect a shift that if we are seeking entry into energy, we are moving away from disarmament. No, it's not the case. We are just saying that till the time disarmament happens, which is unlikely in the foreseeable future, India also wants to be a part of the so-called this elite club, or India wants to be a part not because it's an elite club, because India wants to protect its national interest, right? And we have a credential of responsible nuclear power. Now, why is China opposing, or how we should analyze Chinese posture? There are three things at present. First is, it might say that you are taking a very hard stand against South China Sea and the Chinese aggressiveness. So if you dilute your stand with respect to South China Sea, we can bargain. So China may use it as a bargaining chip. Another important point is that it is clear that India and USA are trying to balance China. So China may use this card so that India may have some distancing from USA. China may use it as a trade-off for MTCR. It's not actually known, but all these are plausible reasons, and these are the only reasons. Because it is not the merit that China is using, it's the geopolitics that China is actually using. China actually, which is a regional power and it's aspiring for global primacy, wants India to be behind, and if India is at the same table, then it is not able to establish its hegemony, right? And then its hyphenation with Pakistan can be clearly seen because of the growing Sino-Pakistan axis that is developing. So it is because of these regions that it is stopping India's membership. Two things can be done. First is with respect to China, we have already started a two-step process or two-step approach where discussions are going on, but not much has been found. We must also, try to convince our friendly states, others like Brazil, Turkey, etc., which have been against India's entry. New Zealand, which was against, has already accepted India's thing. And then we should also try to have some low profile effort. We have already tried the effort with high political capital. Now some low political effort should also be there. Together with this, we can also try to exploit the Malabar exercise. In this way, we can get NSG membership. Thanks. What's up, guys? Aditya here, and I'm back with the last lesson of our discussion on India-China relations. In this lesson, we're going to talk about the geopolitical context in which the relation has grown and will develop. We've already discussed many of these contexts in our previous 7 lessons on India-China relations. This lesson is presented by me. You can read more about me here. You can follow me on this link. I would request you to recommend the video if you feel this is helpful. And I would also request you to give your feedback in the comment section below for the next thing that we could pursue. Now, India-China relations in the context of geopolitical transactions. Now, what are these transitions, right? So there are many transitions that are happening. So post 1991, you had a kind of unipolar world order. And to know more about these world order and how it is changing, please refer to the previous first 3 lessons of this series on international relations. I have dwelt in great detail about what is world order, how it changes, etc. But basically what happened was that after USSR, USA was the sole power or the sole superpower. So you had one kind of hegemony that was established by USA. So it was considered to be stable because no other power were confronting USA. USA tried to act as a global policeman, wanted to establish peace and order. But at the same time, you had another country. When USA brought an era of peace and stability in Asia Pacific region, what happened was it gave China time to build its economic, military and political strength, right? So today China, the second largest economy, one of the 2 biggest economies in terms of trade, fourth largest in terms of expenditure, in various military strengths, etc. So hence now what is happening is that China is now gaining prominence, and now China claims that it wants to gain its seat in the international political game. USA, on the other hand, is reluctant to give the position or to give its position of prominence. So what we are seeing is we are seeing a kind of transition where USA's hegemony is being challenged by China and its rise. Together with this, we are also seeing a rise of other great powers like India. You also have Indonesia. You also have revival of Russian, resurgence, as you see. Together with this, you have that after the 2008 crisis, you have the Western economies and their financial markets going into a slumber, while the China continued to grow till very recently. So what you have is now China is challenging the economic, financial as well as the military hegemony and is trying to carve out a sphere of influence. You see all these things, and these are the manifestations when you see a South China Sea debate where you have China taking aggressive postures on territorial integrity and claiming approximately 90% of that whole China region. At the same time, you also have USA that's going for something called as the Asia pivot or pivot to Asia, where it's redeploying its military forces in the Asia Pacific region. It's forging these alliances with new countries, new partnerships like Philippines, Indonesia, etc. It's also trying to strengthen its traditional allies like Japan in the recent times. So what we are seeing is one of the major transitions that is happening, particularly in the Asia Pacific region or the Indo-Pacific as it is sometimes called, is this transition of power. So you have many powers like Japan, Korea, South Korea, Japan, India, etc., who also want a multipolar world order, but at the same time you have China as well as its major rivalry with United States of America. So this is the transition that's happening, and in this regard we have to see India-China relations. So first we'll understand the China-USA angle, then we can understand what is happening in other areas. So we all know China has grown significantly in its national power, be it economic, military, etc. It is challenging its USA's hegemony, and now China says, or it's claimed that China would not like to play with by the rules which are set by USA. And this is the difference. You see, in 2008, when NSG gave waiver to India, China had to accommodate the concerns of USA because USA's strength at that time was comprehensively much more than it is today. But today, even when USA says that we want India into the NSG, and it is trying its level best to get India into NSG, going by the media reports, but China is not willing to abide by the norms that USA sets. China claims that it can set the norms of the global order. It claims that it has equal position in the so-called G2, or the grouping of two, that is USA and China, and hence China is being more assertive. We can easily see this in the NSG case. So there was a greater geopolitical angle that was involved in blocking India's entry. We can also say that although China claims its rise as peaceful, China usually maintains that China is going to rise peacefully, but you must understand, going by the strategic culture, their history, etc., China is willing to flex its muscle and will not hesitate to flex its muscle. So whether you take South China Sea or any other thing, if China can easily say that the Permanent Court of Arbitration or the Hague Court, it will not abide by its rule, it will not sign any water sharing agreements, it will not, it claims approximately 90% of South China Sea. These are all, and it is also deploying and modernizing its military infrastructure, particularly in the islands of South China Sea. You can easily see that China is willing to flex its muscle and will flex its muscle irrespective of whether USA takes redeployment of military forces in what is called as its pivots to China, or pivots to Asia, sorry. Now, Chinese rise will definitely give rise to some strain. This happens usually when any other country who gains power or who gains a kind of hegemony, usually it happens that strains in the earlier kind of order that was established will start to take place. This is what we are seeing in India and USA also. So you see that in India-China relations, you have China blocking India in NSG, not willing to accommodate its hesitations with respect to Masood Azhar issues, so on and so forth. Similarly, you see China and USA relations that are coming into strain. Also, at the same time, it will put stress into the existing security arrangements or negotiating arrangements. So you have China, which in the earlier days was a part of the ASEAN Region Forum or the ASEAN Defense Ministers meeting, so on and so forth. But today, both the ASEAN Regional Forum, the East Asia Summit, the meeting, and the ADMM Plus, they are kind of less effective because China unilaterally takes decisions. Also, at the same time, the member of the ASEAN countries are not willing to go all out against a big power like China. So you must understand that Chinese rise is going to create these kinds of tensions, and that is why India's emphasis on creating an open, transparent regional security infrastructure or architecture, and not just going by and becoming a part of the OBOR, which has security undertones or underpinnings. Right? We also see there are changes in the doctrines. So you have many countries who now look for India to balance China's rise. So you have ASEAN, who is willing to give India a major role or a bigger role to balance the Chinese assertiveness. You have Vietnam asking for India's help, asking for Indian BrahMos missile. You have strategic partnerships with Indonesia, Singapore, Australia, so on and so forth. So you have these kinds of changes that are happening. It is usually called an era of geopolitical flux, particularly in the Asian region, where you have many powers, particularly the big ones among them being the China, then redeployment of USA into Asia, and another important major power, that is India, Japan, and economic powers like Singapore, etc. At the same time, you have something which USA started in 2012, that is Asia Pivot. What we understand as Asia Pivot is just one thing. It has many components. So we have already discussed, you have an economic manifestation of Asia Pivot in the form of TPP. And then you have Chinese countering it by bringing OBOR, RCEP, so on and so forth. You also have USA, military deployment is taking place, and it has committed approximately 60% of its military to be placed in the Asia Pacific region. Now, China is not afraid of this thing, and China itself is increasing its naval presence not only in the Pacific region but also in the Indian Ocean region. That is why you have the Gwadar port, you have instances where submarines are docked in Sri Lankan ports, etc., so on and so forth. USA is also under the Asia Pivot has undertaken strengthening traditional alliances. So particularly you have USA bringing more stronger alliances with Japan and with other traditional allies like Philippines. That is why you have, US President Barack Obama trying to mend the relations with Japan or strengthening the relations. But at the same time, Japan also understands that USA does not enjoy or does not have that kind of military strength that it can provide or it can guarantee security of Japanese and its installations. And that is why you see the change of doctrine in the Japan. So you have earlier, which was a Pacific country with respect to military doctrines, it's now taking more assertive positions. It's now becoming more normal. And that is why you see Japan asking for more strategic partnership, more deepened partnership, strategic and global partnership with countries like India, because it can think that if USA is not alone possible, then India, USA and Japan that together can easily balance China. Right? And USA also wanted to forge new partnerships, and we have already seen that India, although USA wanted us to be a linchpin, but I would not say India is a linchpin. India still maintains its autonomy and is trying to balance the Chinese rise in a practical sense as possible, right? So USA had this vision of forging more partnerships, and in present day also you see that, as our Prime Minister Modi has said, that India-USA relationship is, coming out of hesitations of past. You have more strengthened relationship, particularly in the military dimension. You have the expansion of the Malabar exercises. You have the LIMOA that is being signed, that has already been signed. India being called a major defense partner, so on and so forth. So all these are not only part of USA's Asia Pivot, but also convergence of India's Act East Asia policy, together with India's alliances with Japan, so on and so forth, so as to balance the Chinese rise. Together with this, we have to understand the Indian dilemma. It's not so easy that if you want to balance China, you just directly go and form an alliance with USA or Japan. That's not easy. India is faced with dilemma because of two issues. First is because we have something, and we have always followed something known as non-alignment, which today is called or referred to as strategic autonomy. So India would not take to forge any kind of alliance or relationship that would take away its strategic autonomy, right? And that is why you must have heard about the debate that when LIMOA was being signed, although it had some political overtones, but most importantly, the biggest fear was that India might lose its autonomy particularly. But as you can see, the LIMOA is not an alliance, rather it's just a facilitation agreement, and hence we must understand that India still maintains its non-aligned posture, or what non-aligned in the present day context can be called a strategic autonomy, or autonomy to take its decision without being influenced by any other power. Together with this, India also have its natural image of being a natural leader in this region. We want a stable multipolar world order, which might be in difference to China, which although claims that it wants a multipolar world order, but it wants to carve out a Sino-centric world order, what is called as the usually called as the Middle Kingdom complex that happens to be in China. So what India needs to balance is that it needs to balance Chinese ties, but it should not be sucked into the US-China rivalry. Because it happens that if India goes too near to USA, then US-India-China relations also gets hampered, because India gets into this kind of a rivalry. And there were instances when USA has asked us to do joint patrolling in South China Sea, so on and so forth, which actually is not at all feasible for India at that point. We don't have to lose our strategic autonomy, and we don't have to start any confrontation with China. We have to remember that we cannot afford, not because we cannot match Chinese strength, but because we need to grow and prosper. We need to have economic development, and for that we need peace, right? Together with this, when India goes near to USA to balance China, our relations with Russia also suffer. So India has this dilemma, and we have to forge a kind of alliance which is based on 3 C's, right? So we have to cooperate with China wherever possible, be it bilaterally or in organizations. We need to compete economically with China wherever we can, with products, with goods, with markets, so on and so forth. But at the same time, we need to contain and balance China also wherever necessary. So it's out of necessity that we need to balance and contain China, be it in Act East policy or as we have talked about with Japan, Vietnam, Indonesia, etc. So India needs to have these 3 C's in its policy to tackle the rise of China. In this way, this thing I think is the best policy option that is available today. Thank you for watching. Have an awesome day.